So Donald Trump is found liable by a jury in the E. Jean Carroll sexual assault case. Let's talk about it in today's video. Hi, I'm Mike Greiner. I'm a lifelong Democratic activist who's concerned about the direction our country is taking. I'm also a lawyer and an academic, and I'm going to help you stand up to the BS of the MAGA crowd. So obviously, as one guy who's just sitting here recording videos in my office, I'm not in a position to give you the minute-by-minute updates the way you can get on MSNBC or CNN or pretty much anywhere else on the internet now. So I'm sure when you're watching this video, you've already heard about the verdict against Donald Trump. Nevertheless, I did think there were a few points to make about it. First one is, this is a civil trial, not a criminal trial. The plaintiff in this case was actually the injured individual, E. Jean Carroll, a former Elle columnist who is allegedly sexually assaulted by Donald Trump. Now, years later, she wrote about that experience, resulting in Donald Trump calling her a liar, something that Carroll alleges hurt her reputation, which certainly it could, given the fact that she was a reporter and a columnist, which reputation matters. So again, she's the plaintiff, not the people, not the state, not the United States of America. It's the individual who is injured. So as a result, you've got a couple of things that come from that. Number one, he's not facing jail time. The jury found him liable and he's got to pay her $5 million in damages. There was never the possibility that he would go to prison based upon this. Now, the basis for this lawsuit was Trump calling her a liar. Allegedly, George Conway is actually the attorney who first proposed this legal theory, which is that even though the statute of limitations had run on the sexual assault at the time this case was first brought, Donald Trump's statement calling her a liar is something that's defamation. Now, to be defamation, it would have to be untruthful. So as a result of it, Jean Carroll would have to prove that what she said was true. And when he called her a liar, that was untruthful. And in that process, he defamed her. So that's where the whole issue came up as to whether this sexual assault occurred or not. Now, as this process was going through various versions of litigation, because it was first brought while he was still president, New York passed a law that essentially eliminated the statute of limitations for rape allegations. That's basically in response to the whole Me Too movement. They didn't want to make it where sexual abusers were able to get away with their crimes simply by waiting out the clock. So once that law passed, then Carroll was able to bring claims both for defamation and for the original sexual assault. So that's the first thing. Now, the second thing is, as I always point out to my students, winning a case, getting a judgment against somebody doesn't suddenly mean that you've got $5 million sitting in your bank account. All this does is entitles Jean Carroll to go forward with the process of trying to collect on that judgment. How do you collect on that judgment? Well, you seize assets, you garnish wages, garnish bank accounts, that type of thing. Now, I can tell you that this is probably going to be challenging in Donald Trump's case because you can be assured that he has long protected himself by owning any assets at arm's length, by essentially having companies that he owns or that relatives own, owning companies that own assets. So it's going to be very hard to track down where his wealth is actually located and to try to get some money out of that. That said, I would love to be the attorney trying to engage in that process. But in terms of the process going forward, that might be delayed because, of course, Trump has indicated that he's going to appeal the judgment, which may, if the appeals court grants a stay on collection efforts, delay this process of collecting on the judgment. The final point I wanted to make has to do with one of the defenses that you're hearing right now from Trump's allies and friends, which is that, hey, he really won the lawsuit because the case was about rape and the jury found that he didn't rape her. Well, that's not exactly the case, as is so frequently happens whenever you're dealing with any statements by Donald Trump or his supporters. Again, this was a civil trial, so the jury in this case was tasked with finding whether the evidence supported the allegations by a preponderance of the evidence. The standard here is not beyond a reasonable doubt the way it is in a criminal trial. It's by a preponderance of the evidence. Well, what does that mean? It means that it's more likely than not. And you have to remember, when juries are looking at evidence and making judgments, they are not determining whether something actually happened or didn't happen. They're determining whether there was sufficient evidence to support the claim up to a certain standard. Now, in this case, they found, number one, that there was sufficient evidence to support the allegation that Donald Trump had defamed her. In other words, when he called her a liar, that statement was untruthful and it was harmful to her reputation. So that's basis number 1 for liability. Basis number 2 for liability has to be with the underlying sexual assault in the first place. Now, Carol claims that she was raped by him in a department store. Now, the definition of rape under the law is quite specific. It involves the entry of a penis into a vagina. Now, personally, I believe Carol, and the jury might well have believed Carol as well. My guess is, though, they found that as she described the incident in which he tried to force herself on her and then she pushed him away and went running out of the dressing room, might not have actually resulted in that contact between the penis and the vagina. So certainly the jury is saying, yes, a sexual assault occurred. We're just not certain that there was sufficient evidence to show that an actual rape occurred, as rape is defined under the law. So claiming that the jury did not find him liable for rape is not in any way, shape, or form any kind of excuse for his behavior. Now, the ultimate question people will ask is this going to have any impact on his supporters? My guess is likely not. I mean, Senator Tommy Tuberville from Alabama, one of the stupidest members of the Senate, which is really saying something these days, said that this verdict makes him want to vote for Trump twice. And unfortunately, my guess is for most of his supporters, it's just not going to be relevant. You see, what they engage in is what's called motivated reasoning. They believe something to be true and then either accept or don't accept certain facts in support of their belief. Anything that does not support their belief, they disregard in an effort to avoid this sense that they have an issue with their identity that's called cognitive dissonance. So in other words, it really doesn't matter what facts come out because the people who support him are not going to pay attention to him. And this is what many of us who have tried to engage in discussions with Trump supporters have found, which is that they don't care about the facts. They support him and then so pick and choose facts that support their support for him, rather than using facts to decide whether they should support him. Kind of the opposite of what you should be doing when you're trying to decide who you're going to vote for. So the ultimate result is this probably won't have any impact on things. But despite that fact, my guess is he would have much rather won this case rather than lost it. Well, if you want to see another video where I talk about just how much the Republican Party has become the party of sexual abusers, check out this video over here. I'll see you then. In the meantime, let's hope for continued progress. Thank you.